Hey kids, what's happening? It's about mid-November, and it's still, today was almost summer-like. It wasn't, it was probably in the 70s. Anyway, as winter comes on, we start watching more TV. And we watch a lot of Netflix. So one of the shows we've been watching right now is The American Horror Story. And we watched season 1, and that season was kind of about a haunted house. It wasn't over the top scary. And really, I'm not into horror stuff that much, never have been. But nonetheless, we watched it and kind of enjoyed it, kind of looked forward to see what was going to happen each episode. The second season, however, is about an insane asylum. And I think they stepped it up a notch because it's much more gory and frightening. A lot of supernatural stuff, and it's spooky. Which kind of brings me around to this story that I want to tell you. Back in the early 1900s, they built a county home in Akron, on the other side of Akron, Ohio. And that place was kind of a miserable place for many who had to go there. The county home was built like a huge brick hospital-like building, and all of the destitute ended up there, the homeless, the mentally challenged, the sickly, and the insane. There was stories of torture to the patients, rape obviously, and then body snatching. One of the doctors there was said to take the bodies of the deceased and he would sell them as cadavers to the medical schools. Totally under the table, illegal practice. So, and with that county home, it was because it was a place where the destitute went. They didn't have a lot of money to invest in taking care of those people, so they did a lot of stuff there. It was kind of like a working farm. They had a dairy barn where they had cattle. They raised beef, chickens, all for food, raised their own crops. They had their own gardens there. And those that were able worked the fields to feed those that were incarcerated there in that county home. Well, there was a cemetery back behind the county home where a lot of those people were buried, and they still remain there to this day. Some of the graves are unmarked, some of them are just marked with a number. They're unknown people. They were the basically unwanted. So to bring you up to date then, it was in 1979. And I was made aware of the county home, and I found it quite intriguing, interesting. I thought it was a strange place. And then one day my friend asked me, he said, "Hey, would you be up to going there and sneaking in there sometime and just checking the place out, because it's been closed." I don't know how many years it had been closed down, and it was no trespassing. Well, I was friends with a police officer there, and I asked him, I said, "What are our odds of snooping around in that county home building?" And he said, "Oh man, I wouldn't go in there." He said, all of the police officers here are well aware of that place, and they said it's really creepy. There's some weird stuff going on there. And he told me that they even suspected there was people, like homeless people, that still lived in there. He said it was a very dangerous place. He said, don't go there. He said, really, it's not even worth your time to even go there. It would be very dangerous for you. So I told my friend that, and that just inspired him even more. He had this passion. He wanted to go. He wanted to try it out. He had to go see what it was all about. And so I told him I would go with him. So we made a plan, and it was like a weeknight. he looked at the maps and he saw there was a park about a half a mile away, so he checked it out one day and got back to me, and he said, I think there's a path that goes from this park all the way over there, so we can park our cars in the park and then just walk over through the woods. So I agreed to do that. I met him there one evening, and as we got out of the cars and started walking, the sky started getting black on the horizon and we could hear thunder. So I said, are you sure you want to do this? Because it sounds like there's a big storm coming. And he was pretty sure, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. He said, you know what, the storm will come and go, and we'll be all right. So we parked our cars at the park, and we walked, followed this little trail. It was just a little narrow trail, but looked like it was well worn, that went back through the woods, and then it went down into like a little ravine, and there was a stream there. And where the stream crossing was, there was 2 logs laid across the stream that you had to balance across, and then the trail started going back up again, and it wound all the way up, and it came out into this through this little orchard area, and then we could see some of the outbuildings from the county home. There was some of the barns and cattle barns and stuff, and they were kind of caving in and in really bad shape. But we walked up past them. We came up across this little grassy knoll and right up to the building and to the side doors. It was like a side entrance, and there was double doors there, but the glass was all broken out of the doors and everything. So we basically just stepped right into the building. Well, about that time the storm hit, and the wind picked up ferociously, and the thunder and lightning started cracking down, and we kind of stood there in the doorway just kind of catching our breath for a minute, and we really didn't know what to make of it. I mean, just the storm alone was frightening. It got really dark, and we had flashlights with us, but we just stood there watching the storm, and you know, behind us was just like a dark hallway that just went in. So the storm started pouring down torrential rain, and so my buddy says, you know, well, it looks like we're going to be here for a while. We might as well just start exploring around. So we turned our flashlights on and we headed down this hallway. We went down the hallway a little ways and shined our flashlights in a couple of rooms, and they just looked like, I don't know, examination rooms or offices or something. There really wasn't much to them, just papers laying all over the floor, files and everything. And then we came upon this room that looked like an x-ray room. There was an old x-ray machine or something there. It looked like maybe from the 1950s, really old, and the x-rays were actually laying on the floor. So we were like looking at oh my gosh, look, there's an x-ray there of somebody's body, and you could see the skeleton through the x-ray, and it was kind of really creepy. So we continued walking down the hallway, and the next room we came to was even creepier, because I suggested it might have been the autopsy room. It was a big room, like big open room, and right in the middle was this great big concrete slab-like table, and with a drain right in the middle of it, like, you know, you'd flop a body up there, and the blood would run down into that drain. There was files laying around on the floor and stuff, and it was just really spooky. So we continued our walk. The nerves were starting to get up a little bit, but it wasn't really that scared. I'm thinking, okay, it's just an old hospital, you know, it's abandoned, there's nothing here. A little further up, we came to this room, and my buddy shines his flashlight in there, and he just kind of froze. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm like, you know, what's the deal? What's going on? I shine my flashlight in there. Well, there's a mattress over in the corner, and there's a person laying on the mattress with his back to us, like in a fetal position, in the pitch black. So, you know, I guess at that point the blood kind of rushed to my head. I'm like, oh my gosh. And so we're kind of whispering to each other, and I said, is that somebody laying there? And he goes, that is somebody laying there. And I said, well, he goes, never mind, just keep walking. He goes, it's probably one of the homeless people that sleep here. So that freaked me out. We kept walking. We went all the way down to the end of this hallway, And we walked into this room, and it looked like a ballroom. It was a huge room, big open, huge room. And right away you could hear like water, like running like a waterfall. So we shined our flashlights, and we shined them up, and here up at the ceiling was a hole right in the middle. Right in the middle of the ceiling was this big hole, and the water was pouring down through that hole from the thunderstorm, from the heavy rains. And you could see this big ring of water the size of a swimming pool on the plaster up on the ceiling, where the water had soaked in there. And it was all like bowing way down, like it was getting ready to collapse. So we determined at that point it was really even unsafe to be in that room, because it really did look like anything, any kind of vibration or anything, that whole ceiling could just come collapsing down with thousands of gallons of water that was being held up there. So we turned around, we started walking back down the hallways. My buddy pointed out, we went down this one hallway, and he pointed out to be careful, because right there in the floor in front of us, I mean right in the middle of the hallway, was a manhole cover, and it was off. And we shined our flashlights down in there, and it went down like 15 feet straight down, and there was water down there like a sewer or something. You could have, been walking in the dark and stepped into that thing and really gone down. We ended up at an intersection of hallways, like where a couple hallways came together, and right away we noticed the most creepy thing, that there was these old wicker wheelchairs, like really old, like 1920s style, with the wicker seats. And they were like, every hallway we shined our flashlight down, every single hallway, there was a wheelchair facing us. So that, at that point, I guess the fear continued to build. Now, I don't really know how fear works, but I think it kind of feeds on itself. Like, the more scary things you experience, the more your fear level continues to build, and it gets to a point where you almost get into a panic stage. Well, I think my buddy panicked first. He just said, I'm pretty much done, and he started heading out. And about the same time, we could hear noises like pipes banging and really weird noises coming from the building that, even added more fear to us. And every once in a while, we would stop and listen, and you could hear it, like somebody walking down one of the halls behind us. We didn't see any flashlights, any lights or anything, so we just kind of hightailed it back. And we came through like the main lobby, where the main entrance was, and there was these big staircases that went up to the second floor. And I asked him at that point, I said, we still haven't been up to the second or third floors yet. And he said, the heck with that, we are not going up there, period. So at that point we decided, let's just get out of here. The fear was really starting to build in him, and of course that fed my fear, because I wasn't going to be left there alone. He actually started walking super fast and heading back towards the way we came in. Well, we got to the exit where we came in, headed out through those doors. It was still drizzling rain, and we made it down through the meadow to the orchard, went down to the corner of the orchard where the path was, and we were stopped like dead in our tracks. There was this great big, like 4-foot metal sign that was propped up right in the middle of the trail, like blocking the whole trail. And it said, trespassers will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And it just really freaked me out, because I said, this sign was not here when we came up, and now this sign was actually propped up with some sticks. So we went around the sign and we started going down the trail. Now it was dark in the woods. We had our flashlights to see where we were going. We followed the trail. We could hear like somebody coming behind us, like somebody was running behind us through the woods. You could hear their footsteps coming down the trail. So we started running. We went down into the valley where the stream crossing was, and there are the two logs where you cross the stream. There was actually somebody had taken like wooden sticks or poles and like crisscrossed them all the way across the bridge. You'd have to kick them out of the way to cross the bridge. And that definitely wasn't there when we came. So somebody went behind us and put those there, and they weren't anything that had like fallen out of a tree. They were actually put there in like crisscross fashion, like somebody stacked them there. So we ran across the bridge, we charged up the hill, and we literally ran all the way back to the car, the half mile. Got back to the cars, didn't even lollygag. We just jumped in the cars and said, meet you back at my house. That was the end of the story. That was the end of my experience at the old county home. I would never go back there again. We ticked off somebody. It most likely was a homeless person that was just kind of trying to scare us and say, stay the heck out of my house. This is where I live. Could have very well been. I don't know. But it was spooky. It was scary. And the funny thing was, the very next year, 1980, they tore the place down. They just brought in some big cranes and bulldozers and just tore the place to the ground and leveled it. And they built a nursing home there. Now, if you go up there today, this is in Tallmadge, Ohio, or actually very close, right between Tallmadge and Monroe Falls, Ohio. And if you'll go back in the woods where the old county home used to be, you'll still find that cemetery. It's still there. The old cemetery is still there, as creepy as that is. There's like an old rusty wrought iron fence part away around it. Some of the graves are like sunk in, and it's a spooky place. I don't want to go back there again. Have no reason to go back there again. But watching the American Horror Story and the story about the insane asylum brought back memories of that place, and I had to share that story with you. So there you go. That's my horror story for the Halloween season. Of course, Halloween's over, but it's still kind of a eerie time of year. Till next time, you know what I like to say, ride hard and die free.